Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the Philly Factor. I'm your host, Paul Perrello. In broadcasting, television broadcasting in particular, one of the highest honors that a person could receive is an Emmy. So getting one Emmy is pretty special. 2, 3, 4, 5 Emmys, extremely special. 10 Emmys, perhaps unheard of. 14 Emmys, that's where my guest comes in on this edition of the Philly Factor. Albert Scooter Vertino joins us. Scooter, thanks for being with us. And congratulations on win number 14.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the kind words. 14 probably is a little obnoxious and probably a combination of good fortune and right place, right time.
I have to ask, do you remember the first win? I mean, everybody remembers their first. So where were you when you got word that you had won your first Emmy, and what was it for?
I do. It was 2000. So back in the 2000 Summer Olympics, Turner had kind of, I don't know, it wasn't a joint venture, but it was almost like a program where we were able to work for NBC Sports during the Olympics. They kind of, for lack of a better term, rented us out for, a couple months. At the time, the Turner Sports calendar wasn't nearly as robust as it is now. So going away and working on a different project wasn't unheard of. So we, several of us worked for NBC in Sydney, and the Olympic coverage that year, as in many years, the Olympics is so well done. But back then, it was nominated, won several awards. I don't think I was even aware of the situation, and I think I got an email or form email of some sort that said, you won. I don't even think I was aware that I was nominated, along with hundreds of people that worked the Olympics, and the policy back then, and I don't know what it is now for NBC, but back then, because so many people won and were eligible for the statuettes, is you had to pay, I think it was $250 for the statuette. And at the time I was like, well, I want to pay $250. I don't know. And a coworker of mine said, yeah, you do, because you don't know if you're ever going to win another one. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so let's pony up. And so that was it. And it was a collaborative effort with, like I said, hundreds of people that you probably never ran into in the course of your working day in Sydney. Due to time change and everything else, or time zone, some groups worked early, some groups worked late. You might see somebody at the commissary, whatever, but it was just this long list of nominees, and then eventually winners. So that was the first one, and I absolutely remember it.
And not to minimize, Emmys 2 through 14, but I guess everyone's has got to be special. And as I said, the Emmy is the pinnacle of awards to receive in television, and that says a lot about you, Scooter, and your tremendous talent. Not bad for a kid that started out at LaSalle University.
No, not bad. But I'm certainly not the only one. LaSalle's communication program has been, ascending for years. And we certainly have alums that have been recognized in all fields, not just television. But sports television itself, our alumni base is fantastic. Look, the Emmy is, it's subjective. People vote on it. It's not like my wife was a college swimmer, and she always balks at a lot of team sports that our kids play, because she's like, look, when I swim, you touch the wall first, you win. There's no politics. There's no nuance. It's like fastest, best. There you go. And with the Emmys, there's nuance, and you could say there's politics. It just depends on who's voting on what. And so I've just been very fortunate that the people that I work with have been incredibly successful, incredibly talented in the field that we're in. And we all benefit from that. And it's it's a terrific honor, and one that I think I speak for a lot of my coworkers. Like, none of us take it lightly.
Yeah, one of the things we like to do with this program is to highlight alums like yourself, who 10 years ago, 20 years ago, in my case, 40 years ago, sat in a desk there at 20th and Alney. And while you have, at that point, when you're a student, you have dreams and visions of where you would like to see your career go and what you would like to be doing, down the road. When you were a student at LaSalle, I mean, what was your career goal? I mean, what was your aspiration besides just graduating in 4 years? Did you know where you were going and what you wanted to do?
I did. Yeah, absolutely. And so I kind of had an inkling from a young age that I wanted to work in sports media. And so, I was able to write a lot when I was growing up. I wrote for a local newspaper, covered high school sports in junior high, all the way through graduation of high school. And so I had an idea that there was a there. I really wanted to be on camera. I wanted to be, whether it's a studio host or play-by-play. And so when I got to LaSalle, those were the things that I kind of sought out, whether it was writing for the Collegian or hosting a radio talk show, a sports talk show with fellow classmate Tony Laurata. Tony and I also did the men's basketball games on WEXP back then, which I think the late, great Gary Papa said that his hairdryer had more power than our station, which may have been accurate. Gary had great hair, though. And so I knew there was something that's where I wanted to kind of follow that career path. And if I couldn't play, I figured I'd rather cover. And that was kind of where I went with that when it came to sports. And I tried out for the men's basketball team a couple of times, and I wasn't good enough to make it. I take solace in the fact that those teams were fantastic. But then I was covering those teams and other sports along the way. And, the TV station really wasn't up and running. The comm center wasn't built until, I believe, the year after I left. So we were probably doing more with less at the time, which is fine. I mean, that there's different ways to skin a cat. But I kind of felt like if I could do various activities and try and work on various skills on the creative side of the media genre, then I would be setting myself up. So writing for the Collegian, working on WEXP. I even was public address announcer for the baseball team for many of their home games, I think my junior and senior year. Brother Jerry was instrumental in helping me get several internships. So by the time I graduated, I had interned at Channel 6 on Cityline twice, WUSA in Washington, D.C. once, because that's where my parents lived. And I spent a summer interning at the Olympic Training Center, the U.S. Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, and I worked in their media relations department. Now, that wasn't really broadcast oriented, but it was terrific with regard to just the overall experience, making connections, developing relationships, things that when you're 19 and 20, you don't think are that big a deal, but they absolutely pay off down the line.
Yeah. I want to get your title correct here. So you are Senior Vice President, Production Programming with NBA Digital and Warner Brothers Discovery Sports. So from that experience at 20th and Alney, that you just don't walk into, Warner Brothers and just take your seat at the desk. You had to earn it. And I think anybody that works in this business or any career, it's not often that a job is just handed to you. You have to work at it to get where you want to go. So give us an idea of what your job entails on a day-to-day basis, Scooter.
Sure. And that is my title. It covers a lot. Warner Brothers Discovery Sports is our parent company, which was formerly Turner Sports. Over the last 4 years, I guess we were in corporate nomenclature, we were spun off. First, we were acquired by AT&T, the Warner Media version of Time Warner. So that would have been TNT, TBS, True TV, CNN, HLN, HBO, and the movie studios. And then AT&T, quote unquote, spun us off, and Discovery merged with us. So Warner Brothers Discovery is the parent company. So that's kind of like where the mouthful comes from when it comes to that. The NBA digital part, a lot of people get confused because it doesn't quite specifically cover, but NBA digital means NBA TV, NBA.com, the NBA app, League Pass, and things of that nature fall under the NBA digital umbrella. We run those businesses for the NBA out of Atlanta. So that's the NBA digital part. Day to day, it's a little different during the playoffs. So right now we're in the middle of NBA on TNT playoffs, NHL on TNT playoffs, MLB on TBS every Tuesday night, along with some men's and women's U.S. soccer friendlies that are being played on both TNT and HBO Max as well. So there's something going on in our building, excuse me, every night, every day. And so most of the time, my day is full of meetings in the afternoon. And during COVID, like many, we started to do a lot of remote work. So I take a lot of those meetings from home via Zoom, via phone, what have you. And then I go in at night, and typically I'm there on an NBA night from 6 o'clock at night to whenever the Inside the NBA postgame show ends. And I usually get home around 2 or 2:15 in the morning. So that's a playoff type of day. When the playoffs aren't going on, the hours can be a little bit more traditional. And again, it's full of meetings and planning, because what we're doing all the time is we're trying to leverage the best matchups possible on our air, no matter the sport. But we're doing that for whatever we're in the midst of. So now it's the playoffs. But as we're doing that, we're also trying to build toward next year with next year's schedules for the NBA and the NHL as well. And so you're kind of working in these parallel paths as you go through your day. The production side is what is going on from 6 until 2, as I'm in there just keeping an eye on things to make sure that, that the trains are running correctly. And believe me, our producers and directors are fantastic. I'm just there to lend a hand in case somebody needs a hand, or in case of emergency break glass, when it comes to that type of thing. And every once in a while, there could be something controversial, or, our on-air talent might say something that needs some type of translation down the line. There could be a rules interpretation. There could be some type of dust up in a game that needs a little bit more massaging. That's why someone like myself is in there until the wee hours of the night. But that's the business also, right? Like when I speak to classes, whether it be at LaSalle or anywhere else, I tell everyone that working in sports TV is fantastic. Or I shouldn't even say TV, right? It's like any platform now. You can watch it on your phone, your iPad, your watch, whatever. But sports in general, if you're going to cover sports, it's great. When is it played? Nights, weekends, holidays. So when are you going to work? Nights, weekends, and holidays. So as long as you know that and you're able to kind of strike some balance, then I think you set yourself up for success.
Yeah, one thing that I learned early in this business is, if you're looking for holidays off, or you refuse to work weekends, or you're looking for a 9-to-5 job, this isn't the business to be in, because even when I got started, news organizations were not necessarily 24/7. Not that I'm dating myself like back to the dinosaur years, but we've come full circle now in that we are a 24/7, 365 business. But if you're looking for a 9 to 5 job, then perhaps you might want to rethink your career and take that cashier's job at your local bank, because there is no pause button when it comes to broadcasting, not these days anyway. So I would agree that if you're looking to get into this business, you really have to open up yourself to any opportunity that presents itself. And you may not land the senior VP position at whatever company right away. You really do have to earn it. And you have to work, put the time into it in order to get to that level that you want to be.
Absolutely. And I'm a firm believer that your first job won't be your only job. And so, when people go in understanding that progress isn't always a straight line when it comes to your career path, it wasn't for me. I knew that I wanted to, more than anything else, when I was finishing up at LaSalle, I had come to the conclusion that I did not want to be on air. When I interned for Gary Papa at Channel 6, he allowed me to do some demo reels. And I just was not comfortable with how I sounded, how I looked, whatever. And could that have changed? Certainly, possibly. But I just kind of felt like that wasn't for me. But I was intrigued by the behind the scenes. I was intrigued by the ability to kind of direct and produce what was going on that people were going to see. At the time, it would have been strictly television. And I remember I interviewed with Al Jaffe at ESPN, who was their vice president of production and talent recruitment, I think was his title. And he said he was looking to bring in and kind of birth the next generation of ESPN producers. And to me, that was a striking way of putting it. And it really resonated with me. And so that kind of is where I think in my head, I pivoted to thinking that was something that would be for me. And again, that was a production assistant's job, which was, absolutely, a step above intern, so say intern is what you would do while you were in school. And the production assistant's position was your first step out of school. It was 6 months. It was a 6-month temporary job. And after 6 months, if you were, I guess if you were above and beyond, or if they saw potential in you, then you got quote unquote kept. You became a permanent production assistant, which meant that you were then, full time. You got a little bit of a bump in salary. You got benefits, and then you were off and running from there as far as like what your next career step would be. And that was absolutely, to your point about, taking any opportunity, that was the opportunity. When I interned at Channel 6, they had this big map on the wall, and it had a list of all of their affiliates, all the ABC affiliates around the country, and their phone numbers. And I think it was the sports director, because that was the name that they gave everyone who was the lead anchor, was the sports director. And so I wrote down that, or I took a picture of it, or I wrote it down. I guess no one took pictures of stuff back then. It was 1992, 93. So I probably wrote it down. And I sent letters to every one of those that I could find, every one of those stations, asking if they had an opportunity or what, anything. And I think I got like 3 rejection letters and nothing else. So the fact that ESPN actually responded and invited me up for an interview and all those things really, really stood out. I interviewed in April, graduated in May, and started there in July.
Wow. You were lucky, because that's not the norm, at least back then, or even today. It's a while before you're hired, for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Was there ever, Scooter, a plan B? I mean, oftentimes, I know in my case, I knew what I wanted to do, how I was going to do it, what I was going to need to do to get to where I wanted to be. But I don't ever think I had a plan B to say, well, if this doesn't work out, this is what I'm going to fall back on. I mean, it seems to me that you knew from early in life what you wanted to do. So was there ever a fallback plan for you?
Well, I think because, well, not really, but I think that's because I had such a good interview at ESPN, and that occurred before I graduated. There was always the angst that you would get as a senior, for sure. I saw a lot of my classmates that were, the people I was probably closest to. Troy Pierce went into the family business. Michael Bergen, I believe, went into grad school, and Tony Lorado went to law school. So those three guys, I kind of saw like, okay, well, they kind of have their paths. Like, no, okay, what are you going to do, genius? And I think I was focused on ESPN, but there were some possibilities maybe in my head. I was thinking them into existence with some local stations in Washington, D.C. I was also doing some coaching with one of the local high schools at their camps and summer league and things like that, which is fine. If you're 23, 22, I don't know the long-term prognosis on that type of thing. So there wasn't necessarily a huge rush. But no, I mean, look, we're putting our eggs in this basket and we're going to make it work. So no, there probably wasn't a plan B per se, as you would maybe want your kids to have a plan B.
Sure. Yeah. We have a few minutes left here on our program, and we could go on for hours, needless to say. But given where you sit in your career today, and given where the media is going, because we are really seeing the media landscape, and you alluded to this earlier in the interview, we are seeing the media landscape change. Not everything is broadcast, not everything is cable. There are all these other platforms that are out there now. So from your perspective, where do you see this all going? And I know it changes on a daily basis. And what might be the norm today could definitely be old by the end of the week. So where do you see all this going when it comes to your world in sports broadcasting?
Well, we'll see. It's interesting. We should see relatively soon, right? So the media rights for the NBA are up at the end of the 2024-2025 season. So those agreements are usually in place well before those rights expire. So it just flows into the next agreement, right? So, that's been the case with us and Disney, I think, since 2000, when they took over the NBC package, which would be ABC and ESPN. We are basically on the verge, I believe, of 41 years of a relationship with the league. So our relationship's a little longer and a little longer tenure with those folks. And it's a wonderful relationship. The key is going to be, what do we want to do and what do they want to do when it comes to whether all of your games, I guess the argument now is going to be reach versus, financial. And so maybe, and I don't speak for the NBA or anyone else, but if they're looking at a streamer that's offering them $100, and then they're looking at a broadcast company that's offering them $50, I would be very curious to see what the decision is, since broadcast, which is, is still going to reach more homes than Amazon, Apple, Netflix, whomever. And so I think we'll kind of see that. Now, they could thread the needle and try and do both. That's certainly, that's something you see with the NFL currently with their Amazon deal, and their weekend games are still, widely distributed on both broadcast and streaming, going from the DirecTV package to now with YouTube and their Sunday Ticket. So I think I don't really have a great answer as to where we're going to wind up, but I think you're seeing a lot of flares go up to try and see what the best situation is. Locally, you're also seeing some of this when the Phoenix Suns and the Phoenix Mercury were dealing with some issues with their Bally's local RSN affiliate and rights fees. And there's a lot of news written about this, where the Bally group is having some difficulty paying the local RSN fees. And so what the Suns Mercury ownership did was they decided to then take those games off of the RSN going forward and put them on an independent station, which is available over the air. And so, that, and I believe the thinking is they could make up the money you lose in the rights fees from the RSN with over-the-air broadcast, over-the-air advertising. So only the Suns know if that's going to make them whole or not, but it is an interesting way of going about it. So it's a long answer to your short question, is that I'm not really sure, because there are so many irons in the fire right now.
Right.
But the key is the key is the games. And as long as there's games, they have to be broadcast somewhere. And so, if you're at Salle or anywhere else and you're thinking, okay, well, this is a pretty turbulent time in the industry. Yes, granted, but somebody has to produce those games. Somebody has to announce those games. Someone has to schedule those games. Someone has to work camera. Those things don't change. Where you consume them may, but the fact that someone has to broadcast them won't.
2 minutes we have left, and I want to end with the nickname Scooter. Where's that come from?
It's not I wish there was a better story. So when I was very little, an infant, I think I had some type of aversion to milk, lactose intolerant, maybe. And so my stomach hurt one day, and I brought my knees up to my stomach and I scooted across the floor. And my dad's response, apparently, or observation, was, "Look at that little scooter go," and it stuck. So in our industry, it's fine. Like, Scooter, you don't want doing your taxes. You don't want representing you in court. You don't want operating on you. Scooter watching sports on television, you could probably deal with that.
Well, this has been a great half hour, and I want to thank you for your time, taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us here. I want to congratulate you again on the 14th Emmy and your brilliant career, and hopefully at some point we'll be able to connect again in the future. Scooter Vertino, thanks for being with us on the Philly Factor.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Until the next time, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul Perrello. Thanks so much for being with us here on the Philly Factor.